Some subjects are extremely loaded, right? I've been chatting with you about the subject of moving someplace better. The numerous times I sought out to leave from where I was to someplace else to live, thinking, this is the place I think I want to live, or this is the place that I should live. Very philosophical question. Where should I live? Should I stay here? Why? And there are a lot of factors, right? From pure aesthetics, if you're a person who finds scenery to be extremely important. Aesthetics has certainly become an extremely important thing for me with respect to contemplating where in the world I've wanted to live. And we have a beautiful view of mountains from here, so I'm quite thrilled with that respect. But there are other factors as well. You want to be close to those you love. I happen to be close enough to my mother and stepfather, my sister and brother-in-law, so these are good things. There are other factors, though. Perhaps there's a college where you want to go, or perhaps you've fallen in love with someone who lives elsewhere, or perhaps you just have lust for adventure and someplace calls you for whatever reason. I mean, there's a plethora of reasons why one might want to live where one might want to live. And so my story of trying to find the right place and all has been really quite complex. A loaded subject. You can see here, this is all from an unpublished personal essay which has now served as fine notes on the topic. This part was just my move to California, which was never finished. And I'm talking to you broadly about the various moves I've made, but I've also been talking more specifically in the last series of videos about my move to South Beach. I've been talking to you also about the nihilism that plagued me in South Beach, talking about how we can associate certain abstract philosophical ideas with where we lived or live, and ideas we've been developing as we live there, or things that we associate for one reason or another with that place. I think that where we live, there's so much. I've talked about how there's so much symbolism to where we live and such. I mean, the perfect example, just here in Basking Ridge, I can't yet begin to tell you just how spiritually refreshing this move has been. In the first place, all the roads around here, we just don't know them, it's so adventurous and mentally stimulating and new, after what could only be described as an extraordinarily long-term rut living in Plain Jane, East Windsor. Additionally, we live in a new condo, and we have even like a new kind of flooring. We have bamboo flooring as opposed to carpet. The geography is different. I was telling you about the mountains in the background, the forested mountains in the background, as opposed to just flatness, trees, and little patches of pseudo open space. And a lot of lawns and houses that look either old or unkempt. Yes, extremely refreshing. And so the symbol of this move is like a chance, for me, it's a chance to, I feel this clean slate. Even this desk I have is new. I didn't spend much money on it. I spent much more money on the desk I used to have, but I finally have this new desk. It didn't cost more than $100. It's extraordinarily simple, but wide, and has a sort of elegant wood look to it. And it just, this bombardment of newness. This may go down as perhaps one of the most important moves I've ever made in my life. Certainly any move I made in the past throughout my 20s, from South Beach to Oceanside to Chesterfield, New Jersey, etc., they all utterly pale in comparison to this move, of course. I mean, I've also spoken to you about how this move also, symbolizes the fact that this is a move we really wanted to make. It's also a move we didn't rush into. And it's a move that we engaged in with a maturity, with a sense of direction, all these things, these contextually important factors that weren't the case in past moves. Now, moving back to, I was telling you about South Beach, right? The symbolism of that move is one of a nightmare, actually. I mean, it is really funny to me. I don't know if funny is the right word, but all three moves I made to Florida ended in disaster. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about Florida, or maybe it was just a coincidence. I mean, I don't think it's this god-awful state. So I can't fully explain why Florida was so bad so consistently, though I was so bad so consistently, and that would of course have a part to do with it. So I kind of lied when I said I don't know. It's funny when we talk how sometimes we just gaffe. It's inevitable. Have I told you the story about the time I was in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and we were walking along the boardwalk, and there was this crew from, I want to say, PBS, and they were making a documentary about how Asbury Park was being remade, and they asked me what my opinion was. Now, what I meant to say, they had the camera right in front of my face, what I meant to say on camera was that I thought that Asbury Park had become quite happening. Happening was the word I wanted to use. But what was the word I accidentally said instead? Uppity. You can call Asbury Park a lot of things. Uppity probably isn't the proper adjective for it. Alas, 'twas what I said anyway. It was on camera, and it was just a Sean O'Connor gaffe. But these things happen. There is a great quote from Montaigne, but I don't know where it is at this time, about, how sometimes we just say things. Actually, I think I do have it. If you will bear with me only a few seconds. It's from I think it's On the Art of Conversation was the name of the essay I was reading. Yeah, On the Art of Conversation. He does have some interesting points about how sometimes we just say things. I like this. He says, "Sometimes my mind launches out with paradoxes which I mistrust, and with verbal subtleties which make me shake my head, but I let them take their chance. Even minds of sustained power are not always sustained in their application and discernment." That is, grosso modo, I hope I pronounced that correctly, the Tacitus, which is presented to me, Tacitus, vaguely enough by my memory, all grosso modo judgments are lax and defective. He'd also put it in an alternative draft, all universal judgments are lax and dangerous. Now, I don't share his cynicism quite. He's a bit too cynical for me. He's also a misogynist, if you read on. It's interesting how people can be both so pleasant to read in certain respects and so frustrating to read in other respects. His chauvinism and misogyny is all throughout his essays. He always views women as weak, as not suitable for things that men are suitable for. It's really disturbing. So, moving back to my point though, I don't share his cynicism, but yeah, we gaffe, we say things we don't mean, etc. We do things we don't mean. We are people sometimes that we don't mean to be, right? As I look back on South Beach at 19, 20 years old, I guess I don't, it would have been 2006, so it would have been 19. It was 2000. Wow, my dates are all confused. The coffee has not settled in, obviously. I was 20. No, it was 19. I lied again. One more reason, by the way, I love Notes from Underground, which I've talked to you about before. That way the mind works, where sometimes we just get forgetful, and I'm saying this, but I meant that, and then I meant this, and the little knots that sometimes the mind can find itself in. You will observe that in Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. It's captured superbly, and is certainly one of my inspirations. Not because I want my mind to be in a knot. Actually, I try to untangle my mind at all times. But that sense of trying to present a human being in an honest way, in a realistic way, that is one of my objectives. Moving on then. Been talking to you about South Beach. I've been talking to you about the nihilism that I suffered from in South Beach. I was speaking to you about certain psychological factors, right? The anxiety and depression, and my fatalism or determinism, and this, how that related to my awful view on romantic love. I want to talk to you a little bit more about that today, and some of the issues also, that other factors that sort of complicate the way I was thinking when I was in South Beach, because I can't reiterate enough how my thoughts and feelings about South Beach, and all I associate with it are fundamentally shaped by the complexity of things I was wrapping my mind around at the time. So, yeah, I had this view of romantic love tied to this view of fate that goes back quite a ways. You could say, going back to my youth, there are few things which I can recall caring more about, having more interest in, and feeling more passion for, than some idea of romantic love. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it... I don't know. My parents ended up divorced, so I'm not sure to what degree that influenced me and my views on romantic love. All I know is by the time I was like 3.5 on to 4, I loved girls, and there was a particular girl that I was, I suppose, quite taken by, even at that young age. All that time gone by, up to now, I should say, I still love romantic love. I have quite toned my view on the subject, and I am so extraordinarily lucky to be married to Ashley Constance O'Connor, my amazing, brilliant wife, who is constantly revolutionizing the way I think about things, who is always teaching me new things, and who I look up to so very, very much. Who is beautiful, brilliant, all of these wonderful things. But I tried to keep her out of these vlogs because I respect her privacy. As I do, I respect the privacy of all people, so I really only talk about myself and only talk about others in contexts where I think that their privacy is not violated, or if it's, it's a very public thing, or if it's something that there just would seem no reason why it couldn't be stated. Anyway, going back to like 2-3 years old, I just had this it almost seems like a genetic or inherent obsession with romantic love. And by the time I was, I want to say 10 or 11, I really began developing my earliest ideas of what romantic love might be. And this was inspired by the movie Grease. Anyone who knew me then, or knew me throughout, I guess, middle school, would know I was obsessed with Grease. I was obsessed with John Travolta. He became my idol. I wanted to be a movie star like him. And there was, I think, a sense of romantic love that I got out of that movie, Grease, as much as West Side Story too, actually. Grease and West Side Story both had these ideas of love, or probably the earliest ideas of love that I latched onto, other than, say, the divorce, my parents, and perhaps the marriage of my grandparents on my mom's side. That was an example of a relationship that appeared to work. Though, being so young, I don't know that I was so deeply exposed to too many aspects of it. What was it about Grease? There was this sense that they fell in love, I think, at first sight, or something quite like that. These two people from different places of the world. Sandy was from Australia, and Danny, I guess, where does Grease take place? California? Right? They meet on the beach. So, I don't know, I was so inspired by that. I wanted to meet the love of my life on the beach, and I became obsessed with the beach. I mean, I've always been obsessed with the beach. Quite like romantic love, the beach had been a motif of fascination throughout my youth. And there was this sense of it working out in the end. Though there's all this trouble between Danny and Sandy. Sorry to ruin the movie, but they end up together, at least by the end of the school year. We don't know what happens to them after that, but we know that they are together through then. And West Side Story, though, is much more tragic because Tony dies and Maria is left without him. We don't know what would go on with respect to her story. Anyway, so I'm grappling with these ideas of romantic love. I don't know how much I actually gleaned from them, but these are my earliest exposures to ideas of romantic love. And then there's, my mother and my stepfather and my father and my stepmother and these different examples of romantic relationships that can be. So actually, there's a lot of different conceptions that I'm having of what it might be. And I go on my own and have my own ideas anyway. And I have I don't know exactly what prompts me to establish this idea, but for me, and maybe from the movies even that I've seen, where there seems to be an utterly inexplicable attraction to two lovers. For me, definitely by the time I'm in 5th grade, I think, my idea of love is based on a mystical attraction to the face of whatever girl I'm crushing on at that particular time. A utterly mystical attraction. Looking at her face, it's not pure lust in the context of looking at someone and feeling a fully sexual charge, right? It has more to do with if you ever look at the ocean or a sunset or some aspect of nature that makes you go like, wow, in a sort of fawning, more spiritual kind of way. This would be the way that I began to approach romantic love. And so from that point on, I can't quite say that I associate romantic love with anything rational. And there are probably still a lot, I know people today who are fully grown who don't view romantic love as a rational thing. They associate it with all that is irrational but workable in life or something. It's not something I'm able to wrap my mind around now, that I strive much more for rationality, but I know people who do have this view. Particularly if you consider my father and my stepmother. That was an example of a marriage that seemed to me utterly irrational, and it would probably be a good example for why I didn't see necessarily a need for rationality in application to one's view of romantic love. My father was apolitical so far as I knew. As far as I know, he was pretty much apolitical. And when he had a sort of political drizzle, it leaned democratic or liberal to the fullest extent of my knowledge. Whereas my stepmother, and I won't tell you too much about her, she's not my stepmother anymore, she was a Republican, a very active, vehement, defined Republican. So how her and my father got on, I don't really know. She also had elements of Christianity, belief in Christianity, and certain sort of conservative ways. I think I once used the word sexual, and she chastised me for it. Don't you ever say that. Don't you ever use that word, something like that. I always thought that was very strange. Because my father, on the other hand, my father was the kind of person who we could be out to dinner, and my father would just say, rather randomly. So I was watching this porno the other day called Daddy's Dirty Videos, and he would just blurt it out. And I don't really know what the significance of that was or why he would do that, but it's just interesting how different him and my stepmother were, and how that sense of a romantic relationship was apparently irrational, right? Now, why am I telling you about all of this? We're supposed to be talking about South Beach, right? How can you understand how, in the midst of my first really serious romantic relationship, in which I am an utter abject failure at it, how can you understand that without first understanding my earliest associations with romantic love? The two are quite entwined. You see, the thing is, also, even though I had girlfriends prior to this girl, prior to my Florida girlfriend, if you will, or South Beach FGCU girlfriend, perhaps we might call her, I did have prior girlfriends, and though most of them weren't really serious, there was one girlfriend I had from Delaware who I guess the emotional attachment lasted for a while, several months, but I can't say we got to know each other really. I knew she was, I think, into her Christianity a bit, and thought my anti-Christianity repugnant, to the best of my memory. But I don't recall really ever having a serious romantic relationship, not through high school. You know, there are girls you kiss here or there, girls you say you're going out with for a few months at most, maybe. I don't know if any relationship I had even lasted X amount of months. And there are a plethora of reasons why romantic relationships just did not work out for me in high school. But one of them, I've talked to you about my anxiety. I mean, I was a wreck. I was utterly shy and no confidence, all those kinds of things. And maybe even somewhat a snob, too, in a weird, ironic way. Just as much as I perceived that nobody, no girl would ever want to consider me, there were probably a number of girls who, beyond the sort of superficial attraction, I probably thought that I just didn't like them personally. Anyway, though, anytime I did fall in love with some girl, I was always just into her face, and this, I guess you call it, just this reaction that I would feel, this sort of like, you've seen it in the movies, you've probably felt it, you know what I'm talking about. But it was pure feeling, is the point that I'm trying to say, not who is this girl? What is she interested in? What are the key elements of our connection or our possible connection? Those kind of things I never really thought about. The only extent to which I might have thought about those things were, is she as hopelessly romantic as I am, or does she seem like she could be? That's about the fullest extent that I ever attempted to reason through any kind of romantic feeling I sort of had. Don't worry, this is going to lead to something I think that makes sense to you. So, at Kane University, there were a few brief romantic situations. Again, nothing, though, quite serious. Then at Florida Gulf Coast University, I meet this girl. And though still, I think, there's still deeply irrational in my reaction. That is, the whole, I'm swooning over the mystical way she makes me feel, and that's becoming the basis of this, my interest. There was that aspect to it, and it was very key. But there was an iota of rationality to our connection, because she was very interested in movies, and I was very interested in movies. We were both artistic. For her, it was more into the realm of movies. For me, it was more into the realm of writing and poetry. So there was like this basis of connection. And so this relationship began. It would have been around February of 2004, 2005, 2006. Yeah, so I was 20, which means I was actually 20 when I lived in South Beach, so forgive me for getting that wrong. I was actually 20. And this was the first, I guess you could use the word, serious relationship I had, because this was the first girl that I saw essentially every day and spent all of my time with. Prior to that, though I'd had relationships, even at Kane University, it was like, oh, okay, well, we'll hang out once or twice a week, or I'll see you then for a little bit. You know, in high school, I never really hung out with anybody. I had a few friends outside of the actual high school I went to, and we hung out, but I certainly wasn't hanging out with them all the time. In terms of the way that I changed socially, by the time I was at Florida Gulf Coast University, even when I was in these states of solitude, I was very often with somebody. Whether it was this group of people I was smoking pot with, or it was somebody else. There was always with someone. It was extremely social. So this girl and I, we began to see each other every day and spend almost all day, every day together. That was the first time I'd ever been in that kind of situation, in a romantic relationship with some girl pretty much all the time. We began doing everything together, going places together. I mean, really spending day to day with each other. It was the first time at 20 years old that I'd ever experienced that, and it was quite a mind-blowing thing. So the relationship lasts the entire semester. It begins probably February, I think, of 2006. 2006, and lasts until about, we make it through the semester, and we're going through these changes because at that point I'm done with college life and I'm dropped out. And on her part, she's not sure what she wants to do in life, but she knows that she's done with Florida Gulf Coast University. So I actually took off with her on the last day of college and drove to South Beach with her and spent the week there. And then I went back to New Jersey for the summer, and she stayed in South Beach. Now that's when we'd made these plans that we were actually going to move to Great Britain. And alas, the relationship falls apart for a variety of reasons. And we're doing also that long distance thing over the summer anyway. And the relationship falls apart, and that's when I decide, though, by the end of the summer, after the relationship had ended and we're no longer going to England, fine, I'm going to South Beach. She's there. I've got money. I need to do something other than hang around in Jersey. I need a sense of adventure if I'm not going to get it through Great Britain. At least there's a reason to go somewhere. She's there. And I'll try to bring this relationship back. So now you're getting, I think, sort of the context of first sort of serious relationship, but with a totally irrational view of romantic love. And I'm going to leave it there for now. The point then that I want to leave you with, though, is that I'm having these nihilistic views. I'm feeling this plethora of anxiety and depression, and I'm still nonetheless committed to this evolving idea of romantic love as I understand it, and I'm a determinist and a fatalist as well. And these are all of the complex ideas that are swarming around in the contexts that are going on in my mind. And I will, again, I'll leave it there. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch my vlog, and I will chat with you later. Have a great day. Bye.